Assalamu alaikum. This is your computer science teacher Sir Fawad Akhtar Ansari, and today we are starting class number 2 of the topic pseudocode. So in the previous class we understood the concept of a pseudocode, that what is a pseudocode and why do we use it. Then we understood the writing rules, that how do we write the pseudocode. So there are certain rules to follow. So we understood the concept of the rules. Then we understood the concept of variables and the constant, and then we understood the concept of basic data types. Now in today's class we are going to study that what is the sequence of writing the pseudocode. Like, we read the question, okay, we analyzed it, okay, but how do we write? Like, what should I write first I write input, or first I write output, or what step first I write? So these are the steps, or this is a sequence of writing the pseudocode. So first step, or the first sequence, that we write the declaration, right? And in the next step we write the initialization, and then in the next step we display the message, which is called output. And then we take the input, which is called user input. So in the input, user can input the string or a character, or any variable, right? And after that, the most important part of the sequence, or I can say that the most important part of the order of writing of the pseudocode is the operation. For example, in your question, if you have to perform addition, or subtraction, or multiplication, or division, or any other kind of arithmetic operation, so you will use this step. But for example, instead of the arithmetic operation, you might encounter a loop, or you might use a loop. So you will use loop in this step. Another example is, what if you do not have arithmetic operation required and the loop is required. You do not need both of them. So it is a possibility that you might have a requirement of the conditional statement in the question. So when you are analyzing the question, you must understand that what is being asked. They are asking for any kind of arithmetic operation, or they are giving you a hint to use a loop, or they are telling you to use a selection statement or a conditional statement. Let me write here selection statement, because it is also known as selection statement, right? So it depends upon your question's requirement. If it indicates you that you have to perform some sort of arithmetic operation, then perform arithmetic operation. Otherwise, if it gives you a hint to use a loop, then go for the loop. If the question requires conditional or selection statement, so you will use conditional or selection statement, right? And then now next step is output, the same thing, display the message, and then write ENDN. So this is a standard rule, this is a standard order, or a standard sequence of writing a pseudocode. So I hope you are pretty much cleared with this concept, that what is a sequence of writing the pseudocode, that what should I write first, then what should I write next. So first is a declaration, then initialization, then output message, then input, take the user input, then arithmetic operation, or you may use loop, or you may use conditional or selection statement. It depends upon the question's requirement. Next is the output to display the message, and then end. So you must keep these things, in your mind about writing rules, how to write the pseudocode. The rules, you must memorize the rules, and then you also must memorize the sequence to make your pseudocode well structured, or to make your pseudocode well organized. Now let's try to solve some sample questions. For example, write an algorithm using pseudocode, which input name, input age, display name, display age. This is pretty much simple question. So let's start with the first step, which is called declaration. So declare. So first it says name. All right, so I take a variable name and I set the data type string, right, because it contains alphabetical characters. Now next step is to input age. So I write age and the data type is integer. You may also take real, there is no restriction in this question. So we have taken two variables, name and the age. First step is done. Now next step is the initialization. So now let's do the initialization. So my variable name is being initialized with the blank space and the inverted commas. This is how a string initialized, right? Next is the age, and then numbers always initialize with the 0, but in some conditions we do not take 0, we take some other random number, but I'm not going in detail of that thing because first let's strengthen the concept of the basics of the pseudocode. So yes, they are the things, they are the variables that we initialize with other values rather than 0. But in today's class we are not going to discuss it. We just discuss the basics of the pseudocode to strengthen your concept, to help you in building the logic. Now in this question there is no sort of calculation. It is just said that input name, input age, output name, output age. This is it. No arithmetic operations have been found. No loop requirement has been found, and no conditional statement has been found. It just say input name, input age, display name, display age. This is it, right? Now next step is to display the message using the output. So you may take print as well or output. Okay, enter name. Then okay, let me remove the extra spaces. Now next I write input and I take the variable name. So whatever the user will input, it will store in this variable, right? Now I copy and paste the same thing. So enter age, and here we take the variable age. Now we have input and input the name, right, and then input the name, and then we display to enter the age and then input age, right? Now we have taken output and input. We have done these two steps. Now we do not have any arithmetic operation, we do not have any loop or conditional statement, right? We do not have nothing, so we just directly output the display message. We jump to this step. Now let's output. You may use print or output, it does not matter. Print, oh, sorry, name is, and then actual name will be displayed instead this variable. Now output ages and then age. So the purpose of writing the variable in the end is to display the actual age and actual name. Now our pseudocode has been completed. Now in the last we write end. So let's revise the question. Write an algorithm using pseudocode which input name, input age, display name, display age. So by reading reading the sequence or the order, first step declaration and then step initialization. So we did these steps carefully. Declaration and initialization has been done. Next thing is to output the display message and then input. So we did it very well as well. We displayed the message and then input, then again display the message, then again input. Now there is no arithmetic operation, loop or conditional statement required, so we jump over the display message. So in the last we just displayed our message and then our pseudocode is finished here. Pretty simple, right? So this is how we write the pseudocode. I hope you get the concept. Now let's solve another question. Now for example, here you have to read the question carefully. You must learn to analyze the question. If you fail to analyze the question, you will fail to write the pseudocode, correct pseudocode. Because if you do not understand what to do, so how will you write the correct pseudocode? This is the main problem. This is a thing where the students get stuck. This is a thing that where the problem begins. So first learn to analyze a question. Previous question was pretty simple and straightforward. This question is also straightforward and simple, but few students might feel that it is a little bit difficult, but believe me, it is not difficult once you analyze the question. So first analyze the question, that write an algorithm using pseudocode that will input the temperature in centigrade and print out in Fahrenheit. So now the formula has been given as well. We will read the formula later on. First let's analyze the question, that input the temperature and then print out in Fahrenheit. Okay, now let's start. First step, declaration or the declare. So it says that input the temperature in centigrade. So I choose my variable name temperature, right? And my data type, it's upon you. Like you want to take a real or you want to take it as integer, it's your choice totally. For example, in this situation I am taking real, and then I take it says that print out in Fahrenheit. Okay, now there's another way to write the pseudocode. For example, when you analyze the question, you might feel that how many variables will I use? You might feel that how many variables will I use in my pseudocode? So do not worry about it. Just leave some lines, 2 or 3 lines for the declaration and the initialization. Why we are doing that? Because you might have no idea that how many variables you will use. So you just leave 2 or 3 lines for the declaration and the initialization. You will fill it later on. First, start working on the body of code. So what is the body of code? This is a line of the body of code, that you just input the temperature and output in Fahrenheit. This is it. Do not go for the declaration and the initialization process. Just leave 2 or 3 lines for your safe side. You will fill it later on. First start thinking that how do you input the temperature and then print out in Fahrenheit. Now I left some lines, 2 or 3 lines for the declaration and the initialization. Now start working on body of code. It says input temperature. Okay, so first we display the message, enter temperature, right? Now here I use a keyword and I take the variable temperature, right? Now next step is to print out in the Fahrenheit. Okay, fine, we can print out in Fahrenheit, but before printing out we have to follow the formula, right? So now let's copy the formula, because we have to print out in Fahrenheit. So first we input, then we convert, right? So instead of temp C, I use a variable temperature, because this is a variable that we need to convert into the Fahrenheit. So that is why we are writing this variable. So the sequence is in front of you. Do not worry. just analyze that. Input the temperature. Okay, we input the temperature, we did that, right? Then says print out in Fahrenheit. But how will you print out the Fahrenheit if you do not convert it? This is the common sense. So first convert it into the Fahrenheit, then display. Now we have converted it. Now it's time to display. So I copy this prompt and I just display that temperature in, I copy here, copy and paste. Temperature in Fahrenheit is, this is my prompt, and after that I want actual value to be displayed. So that is why I use my actual value is stored in this variable. My actual value is stored in this variable after the conversion. So we write this. Now let's end. This is called the body of code. Whatever mentioned in the question, I fulfill the requirement. It says input the temperature. It says input the temperature and then print out in Fahrenheit. Okay, fine. I input the temperature with the prompt. I converted it. If I do not convert, how I will the output in the Fahrenheit? So that is why we converted it and then output. Now it's time for the declaration and initialization. Now you have got actual figure. So now let's perform the declaration and the initialization. So we have got temperature variable. This is our variable that we use. After that we use this variable as well. Okay, so we have two variables in our pseudocode. So you may also take it real or integer, it's your call. I am repeating the same line. Now declaration has been done. Now next step is to initialize. Now let's initialize it with the 0 and then declare Fahrenheit with the 0. Now both steps, declaration and the initialization, has been done. So you can see that our pseudocode is straightforward, that we took the input and then we process the formula, input and then process the formula, and then we just output the requirement. I hope you got this concept as well. Now I have another question, so let's try to solve the other question as well. Let me copy this step. Okay, let me copy the entire pseudocode. The reason is I do not want to type. Now next question is, write an algorithm using pseudocode that will input the distance in kilometers and then print out it in meter. Now we have got this formula. So we have to input the distance in kilometers and then print out in meter, right? So let's start working on the body of code. Now for example, you do not have idea that how many variable you will use, so leave 2 or 3 lines for the declaration and the initialization. Now let's start working on the body of the code. So it says input the distance in kilometer and print out in meter. So I copy the same previous pseudocode, sorry. Okay, so enter, let's change the prompt, enter distance in kilometers, right? Enter distance in kilometer and then we take the variable kilometer. Now we have taken the user input. Now we have to print out in the meters, but before printing out we use this formula. So let's take this formula, fine. Now let's output, because now we have converted our kilometers into the meter. First we input, then we process, and then we output. So we input the kilometer, we process the formula, and then output. So let's change distance in meter is, and actual meter I want to be displayed, so we write done. Okay, now next step is the declaration and the initialization. So I copy and paste previous questions declaration and the initialization. The reason is obvious, I do not want to type, so this is why I'm doing it. So distance, it could be real or integer, it's your call, right? There is no restriction. Now copy and paste it here, and now last step is the initialization. So the initialization step, like first I write kilometer then meter, it could be vice versa, there's no specific order. So now we have solved this question as well. Now I hope you get the concept that how do we write the pseudocode, along with memorizing the rules of writing the pseudocode and the sequence of writing the pseudocode. So writing the sequence of writing the pseudocode is pretty obvious. So declare, then initialize, then display message, input, and xyz. I hope you get the concept, but still, if you have any issue, any query, please ask me on the WhatsApp, and inshallah I will respond to you there as well. And let's wind up today's class. Thank you so much for watching the video. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Yo, listen up, I got a story to tell about a teacher who knows this subject real well. Mr. Akta, the computer science champ, teaching O levels, he's the main stamp. From algorithms to coding, he's got the knowledge, always rocking the class, never in college. He's got the skills, making programming cool with every lesson. He's breaking the rules. Mr. Akta, the guru of computer science, he's the one who got us through like a reliant. From O levels exams to acing every test, we're learning from the best. He's the very best.